I showed up at my parents' lavish anniversary dinner with my children, and as soon as they ran to their grandparents, they only shouted, "Excuse me, where do you think you are headed? Do not come near us." My kids got stunned and then they tried to kick us out, saying, "Sorry, you're not invited. Leave." Then they called security and said, "Get these beggars out." Mom added, "Some people just don't know when they're not welcome." Dad agreed, "Finally someone's setting proper boundaries with unwanted guests." Sister nodded, "Some family members just don't belong at classy events." So we walked away. I quietly canceled every payment, party, and trip. Minutes later, my phone lit up with 36 missed calls and someone showed up at my door. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. My name is Wanda, and I'm a 34-year-old mother of two beautiful children, Cora, 8, and Jake, 6. What happened at my parents' 30th wedding anniversary dinner 6 months ago has completely changed my relationship with my family forever, and honestly, I'm not sure I regret it. Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full context of this mess. For the past 5 years, I've been the family's unofficial financial backbone. After my divorce from my ex-husband Michael 2 years ago, I threw myself into my marketing consulting business and it absolutely took off. I went from making $60,000 a year at my corporate job to clearing over $400,000 annually. My success came at the perfect time because my parents, Robert and Linda, had been struggling financially since Dad's construction business started failing in 2019. Without them even asking, I stepped in. I started covering their mortgage payments of $2,800 per month when they fell behind. When Mom's car broke down, I bought her a brand new Honda CR-V. When Dad needed medical procedures that insurance wouldn't fully cover, I paid the $15,000 out of pocket. I covered their property taxes, helped with utilities, and even paid for my sister Tammy's wedding last year to the tune of $25,000 because they couldn't afford it. But it wasn't just the big expenses. I organized and paid for every family gathering, every birthday party, every holiday celebration. I took them on vacations to Hawaii, Cancun, and even Europe. I bought Christmas and birthday presents not just for my kids from them, but for everyone in the family from everyone else, just to keep the peace and make sure no one felt left out. I estimated that over the past 5 years, I'd spent close to $400,000 on my family. And you know what? I was happy to do it. These are my parents, my sister, my family. I love them, and I thought they loved me too. My sister Tammy, who's 29, works part-time at a boutique and has never been financially independent. She still lives with our parents and contributes maybe $200 a month to household expenses. She had my nephew Tyler when she was young. He's 13 now and has been raised mostly by our parents since Tammy wasn't ready for motherhood at 16. But she's always been the golden child, the artistic one, the free spirit, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I was the practical one, the responsible one, the one who got good grades and made sensible decisions. I thought that meant something. For their anniversary, I had planned everything. I booked the private dining room at Le Bernardin in New York City, yes, the Michelin-starred restaurant, for $12,000. I arranged the flowers, hired a photographer, coordinated with all the relatives, and even flew in my Uncle David from California. The whole event was going to cost me around $15,000, and I was excited to celebrate my parents' milestone. The week before the dinner, I had been working long hours trying to close a major deal with a tech startup. I was exhausted, stressed, and admittedly, I looked it. My usual salon appointments had been canceled, my nails were chipped, and I was living in comfortable clothes while working mostly from my home office, though I still had to travel to client meetings regularly. But I'm a mom running a business. Sometimes we don't look like we stepped out of vogue, and that should be okay. The day of the anniversary dinner, I decided to keep things simple. I wore a nice black dress that was clean and appropriate, did my own hair and makeup, and dressed Cora and Jake in their good clothes. We weren't dressed for a red carpet event, but we looked perfectly presentable for a family dinner. Or so I thought. When we arrived at Le Bernardin, I could see the family already gathered in the private dining room through the glass doors. My heart swelled seeing everyone together. My parents looked so happy, Tammy was laughing with our cousins, and everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time in the space I had created for them. Cora and Jake were excited to see their grandparents. They'd been talking about it all week, especially Jake, who had made a special drawing for Grandma Linda's anniversary. They ran ahead of me as we entered the room, their little faces bright with joy. "Grandma! Grandpa!" Cora called out, running toward my parents with her arms outstretched. What happened next will haunt me for the rest of my life. My father, Robert, held up his hand like a traffic cop and said loudly, "Excuse me, where do you think you are headed? Do not come near us." My children stopped dead in their tracks, confusion washing over their faces. Cora's smile faded and Jake clutched his drawing tighter. "But Grandpa, it's us," Cora said in a small voice. "Cora and Jake." My mother Linda looked at my children with disgust and then at me. Sorry, you're not invited. Leave. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mom, what are you talking about? I organized this entire dinner. I paid for everything. We don't need charity cases at our celebration, Dad said coldly. Then, to my absolute horror, he called over the restaurant manager. Can you get security? We need these beggars removed from our private event. The word beggars hit me like a physical blow. My own father had just called his daughter and grandchildren beggars in front of our entire family. I looked around the room, expecting someone, anyone, to stand up for us. Instead, I saw embarrassed faces looking away and a few family members nodding in agreement. My mother added, "Some people just don't know when they're not welcome." Dad agreed, finally someone setting proper boundaries with unwanted guests. But the final knife twist came from Tammy. My own sister looked at me with contempt and said, "Some family members just don't belong at classy events." Cora started crying. Jake, my brave little 6-year-old, tried to hand his drawing to his grandfather, but Robert turned away. "Grandpa, I made this for you," Jake whispered, tears streaming down his face. "We don't want your gifts," Mom said sharply. Security arrived, 2 large men in suits who clearly thought they were dealing with actual party crashers. The restaurant manager, looking extremely uncomfortable, approached me. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "I'm the one who booked this room," I said, my voice shaking with rage and humiliation. "I paid for this entire dinner." The manager looked confused and glanced at my father, who said, "She's lying. She's not family. She's just trying to crash our party." I could have argued. I could have shown my credit card receipts, my booking confirmation, my phone full of planning texts with the restaurant. But I looked at my children's tear-stained faces and realized that no amount of proof was going to fix what had just happened. My family had publicly humiliated me and my kids, and they didn't care. "Come on, babies," I said, taking Cora and Jake's hands. "We're leaving." As we walked out, I heard my mother say to the room, "Some people have no class whatsoever." The walk to my car was the longest walk of my life. Cora was sobbing, asking me why Grandma and Grandpa were so mean. Jake kept looking at his crumpled drawing and asking if he had done something wrong. I had to pull over twice on the drive home because I couldn't see through my tears. That night, after I put the kids to bed and answered their heartbreaking questions as best I could, I sat in my home office and did something I should have done years ago. Over the next several hours, I got organized. I pulled up every bank statement, every receipt, every payment confirmation from the past 5 years. I made spreadsheets. I calculated interest. I documented everything. The numbers were staggering: $347,000 in direct payments, not counting gifts, vacations, and incidentals. Nearly $400,000 total over 5 years. But more importantly, I made a list of every ongoing financial commitment I had to my family. Parents' mortgage, $2,800 per month. Parents' car insurance, $180 per month. Parents' health insurance supplemental, $400 per month. Parents' property taxes, $800 per month. Tammy's car payment, $450 per month. Tammy's phone, $85 per month. Various utilities and subscriptions, $300 per month. Plus upcoming commitments. Dad's dental work, $8,000, scheduled for the following week. Family vacation to Bermuda, $12,000, booked for next month. Tammy's graduate school tuition, $15,000, semester starting in 3 weeks. Parents' home repair loan I had co-signed, $25,000, they were 3 months behind. The anniversary dinner itself was charged to my credit card for $15,000, including the room, food, wine, flowers, photographer, and my uncle's flight. As I sat there looking at these numbers, I realized something: I wasn't their daughter or sister. I was their ATM. And they had just publicly demonstrated that they saw me as nothing more than that. So over the next 3 days, I started making calls and sending emails to systematically cancel everything. First, I called the mortgage company. "Hi, this is Wanda Chen. I need to remove my automatic payment authorization for account number." It took 20 minutes, but I canceled the mortgage payment scheduled for the following week. Then I called the car insurance company and removed myself from the policy. Same with the health insurance supplemental payment. I called Tammy's finance company and canceled her car payment authorization. I called Verizon and removed her line from my family plan. I canceled the family vacation to Bermuda. Thankfully, it was fully refundable since I had booked the premium package. I canceled Dad's dental appointments. I called Tammy's university and explained that I would not be covering her tuition after all. The home repair loan was trickier since I was a co-signer, but I called the bank and explained the situation. They agreed to remove me from automatic payments and said they would start collection proceedings against my parents directly since they were already in default. By the end of the 3rd day, I had systematically canceled or transferred every single financial obligation I had to my family. I also sent a formal letter to each family member present at the dinner, explaining that since they had made it clear I was not welcome in their lives, I would be respecting their wishes by removing myself entirely, financially and otherwise. Over the following week, I changed all my passwords, updated my emergency contacts, and even called my attorney to update my will. If my children and I were beggars who didn't belong at classy events, then surely they wouldn't want our beggar money either. Then I did one more thing. I called the restaurant manager at Le Bernardin and explained what had happened. I told him that my family had committed fraud by pretending they had booked the event when I was the actual client. I also mentioned that I was considering disputing the charges with my credit card company since the people who claimed to host the event had explicitly stated I wasn't invited. The manager was horrified. Apparently, after we left, my family had racked up an additional $3,000 in premium wine and champagne, assuming I would cover it. He agreed to reverse those charges and apologized profusely for the confusion. I went to bed that night feeling something I hadn't felt in years, free. The next morning, I got up and made my kids pancakes. We talked about the previous night, and I explained to them in age-appropriate terms that sometimes adults make very bad choices and hurt people they love. I assured them that their grandparents' behavior was not their fault and that they were wonderful, lovable children. "Are we still going to see Grandma and Grandpa?" Cora asked. "Not for a while, sweetheart," I said. "They need some time to think about how they treated us." "Good," Jake said firmly. "They were mean to us." Out of the mouths of babes. I dropped the kids off at school and went to work. I had meetings all day, and I threw myself into my business with renewed energy. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally calculating how much my family's latest crisis was going to cost me or juggling their emergencies with my own responsibilities. Around lunchtime a few days later, my phone started ringing. I had put it on silent, but I could see the notifications lighting up the screen. By 2 p.m., I had 36 missed calls from various family members. I listened to exactly one voicemail. It was from my mother. "Wanda, there's been some kind of mistake with the mortgage payment. The bank says it was canceled? Call me immediately. This is urgent." I deleted the rest without listening to them. At 3 p.m., I was in a client meeting when my assistant knocked on my door. "Wanda, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman here who says she's your mother. She seems very upset." I excused myself from the meeting and went to the lobby. There was Linda, looking frantic and disheveled, a far cry from the put-together woman who had called me a beggar the night before. "Wanda, thank God," she said, rushing toward me. "There's been a terrible mistake. All our payments are being canceled. The mortgage, the insurance, Tammy's car, everything. You need to fix this right now." "There's no mistake, Mom," I said calmly. "I canceled everything. Just like you asked." "What are you talking about? I never asked you to cancel anything. Last night, you made it very clear that I'm not family. You called me and my children beggars. You said we don't belong at classy events. So I'm simply respecting your wishes by removing myself from your life completely, including financially." Her face went pale. "Wanda, you're being ridiculous. That was just. We were trying to teach you a lesson about appropriate dress and behavior. You can't just abandon your family over something so trivial." The word trivial made my blood boil. "Trivial? You humiliated me and my children in front of our entire family. You let security escort us out of an event I planned and paid for. You called us beggars, Mom. My 6-year-old son made you an anniversary drawing, and you rejected it because we weren't dressed fancy enough for your standards. Your father's dental work is scheduled for tomorrow," she said desperately. "We don't have the money. And the mortgage payment bounced, we'll get a late fee. Then I guess you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family. Wanda, please. You're my daughter. I love you." Funny way of showing it. I could see she was getting angry now. Her desperate act was fading. "You can't do this. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You owe us." "I owe you?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom, I've given you nearly $400,000 over the past 5 years. I've paid your mortgage, your bills, your medical expenses, your daughter's wedding, your vacations, everything. And in return, you called me a beggar in front of my children." "We never asked for your help," she said defiantly. "You didn't have to ask. That's what families do for each other. Or at least, that's what I thought families did. So you're just going to let us lose our house? Let your father suffer without dental care? Let Tammy drop out of school? I'm going to let you handle your own responsibilities, just like any other adults would have to do. You made it clear last night that I'm not really family, so why would you expect family-level support from someone you consider a beggar?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the exact moment she realized I was serious. Wanda, if you don't fix this immediately, you'll regret it. We'll tell the whole family what kind of person you really are. Go ahead, I said. Tell them how I paid for everything for 5 years and then stop when you publicly humiliated me and my children. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic, especially when they realize their own gravy train might be ending too. That hit home. I could see her calculating how many other family members had been benefiting from my generosity indirectly. You've changed, she said bitterly. Success has made you cold and selfish. No, Mom. Watching you call my children beggars made me smart. She left after that, but not before making several more threats and telling me I was destroying the family. That evening, Tammy showed up at my house. She let herself in with the spare key I had forgotten she had, something I immediately remedied after she left. Wanda, what the hell is wrong with you? She demanded, barging into my living room where I was helping Cora with homework. Aunt Tammy, Cora said happily, running to hug her aunt. Tammy barely acknowledged Cora, pushing past her to confront me. Do you have any idea what you've done? Mom and Dad are freaking out. My car got repossessed this afternoon. The university called and said my tuition payment was declined. Cora, sweetheart, go finish your homework in your room, I said calmly. Aunt Tammy and I need to have an adult conversation. Once Cora was gone, I turned to Tammy. What I've done is stop enabling a family that clearly doesn't value or respect me. Oh, come on. You're throwing a tantrum because we told you to dress better? Grow up, Wanda. Is that really what you think happened last night? You showed up looking like a homeless person to our parents' anniversary dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in the city. We were embarrassed. You embarrassed us in front of our family and friends. I looked like a working mother who had been putting in 18-hour days to pay for that dinner you're talking about. A dinner that cost me $15,000, by the way. Nobody asked you to spend that much. You're right. Nobody asked me to spend that much on the dinner. Or on Dad's medical bills. Or on Mom's car. Or on your wedding. Or on your car payment. Or on any of the hundreds of thousands of dollars I've spent on this family over the past 5 years. I did it because I love you and I thought you loved me too. Of course we love you. But that doesn't mean we can't have standards. Standards? Tammy, you work part-time at the boutique and live with our parents rent-free. What standards are you talking about exactly? She flushed red. I contribute to that household. $200 a month is not a contribution when I'm paying the $2,800 mortgage. Well, maybe if you weren't so controlling with your money, we wouldn't have these problems. I stared at her. Controlling? Tammy, I have never said no to a single request for help from this family. I have never asked for anything in return. I have never made you feel guilty or held it over your heads. How exactly is that controlling? You use your money to make us feel bad about ourselves. I use my money to keep you housed, fed, and comfortable. And last night, you repaid that by calling me a beggar in front of my children. Your kids need to learn that there are consequences for not meeting expectations. That was the moment I realized Tammy was exactly like our parents. She didn't see what she had done as wrong, she saw it as justified. Get out, I said quietly. Wanda, get out of my house. Give me the spare key. Don't come back. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. You just told me that my 8-year-old and 6-year-old deserved to be humiliated because I wasn't dressed well enough for your standards. You're not welcome in my home or around my children. Fine, she said, throwing a key on my coffee table. But don't come crawling back to us when you realize you've made the biggest mistake of your life. After she left, I sat in my living room and cried. Not for the money, I could afford the loss. Not for the inconvenience, my life was actually easier without managing their crises. I cried for the family I thought I had, and for the painful realization that it had never really existed. Over the next week, the calls and messages continued. My Uncle David called to yell at me for abandoning family. Several cousins reached out with various guilt trips about how I was tearing the family apart. Even my ex-husband Michael called to ask if I was okay, because apparently my parents had contacted him asking if he could talk sense into me. But the most telling call came from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. She called 3 days after the anniversary dinner. Wanda, honey, she said, I heard about what happened at the restaurant. I braced myself for another lecture about family obligations. I want you to know that what your parents did was absolutely wrong, she continued. I was there, and I was disgusted by their behavior. Several of us were. This surprised me. Really? Really? Calling you and those precious babies beggars? Letting security escort you out of an event you paid for? It was appalling. Your cousin Mark and his wife left right after you did. They were so upset. Why didn't anyone say anything at the time? Honestly? We were all so shocked that we didn't know how to react. It happened so fast, and it was so cruel that I think we all just froze. But I've been thinking about it ever since, and I had to call you. Thank you, Aunt Patricia. That means more than you know. Your parents have been calling everyone, trying to get us to pressure you into continuing to support them. They're telling people you've abandoned the family over a dress code. But those of us who were there know the truth. What are you going to do? Well, I was planning to loan them money for the mortgage payment, but after hearing their version of events, I've decided not to. If they can't even acknowledge what they did wrong, they're not going to learn anything from this. That call gave me hope that I wasn't crazy, that what happened really was as bad as I remembered. 2 weeks after the dinner, I got a call from my parents' mortgage company. They wanted to verify that I was no longer responsible for the payments, since my parents were claiming there had been an error and that I would be resuming payments. I confirmed that I was no longer paying their mortgage and that any claims otherwise were false. The mortgage company representative mentioned that my parents were already 2 payments behind and would be facing foreclosure proceedings if they didn't bring the account current within 30 days. About 2 months after the anniversary dinner, I got a desperate email from my mother. Wanda, I'm writing to you as a last resort. Your father's dental infection has gotten much worse, and he needs surgery that will cost $8,000. Our insurance won't cover it all, and we don't have the money. I know we had a disagreement at the anniversary dinner, but surely you won't let your father suffer over something so minor. Please call me immediately. I stared at that email for a long time. The word minor stood out like a neon sign. Even now, even facing a medical expense, she couldn't acknowledge that what they had done was wrong. I called the dental office directly and spoke to the billing department. I arranged to pay for Dad's dental work, not to my parents, but directly to the dental office. But I also had them note in the file that this was a one-time payment and that I was not responsible for any future dental expenses. I didn't call my mother back. The next day, she called me anyway. Wanda, thank you for taking care of the dental bill. I knew you'd come through for family. I didn't do it for family, Mom. I did it because I'm not the kind of person who lets someone suffer, even if they've hurt me deeply. Well, whatever your reasons, we appreciate it. Now, about the mortgage. No. Wanda, you can't just. I can and I will. Dad's dental work was a medical necessity. But your mortgage isn't my responsibility. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You raised me to believe that family supports each other with love and respect. You taught me that people who love you don't humiliate you in public or call your children names. You taught me well, Mom. I'm just applying those lessons. So you're going to let us lose our house? I'm going to let you figure out your own financial situation, just like any other adult would have to do. Your sister is going to have to drop out of graduate school. Then maybe Tammy should have thought about that before she said my children don't belong at classy events. There was a long pause. Then Mom said, you know, I always wondered if success would change you. I guess I have my answer. You're right, Mom. Success has changed me. It's taught me that my time and money are valuable, and I should invest them in people who value and respect me in return. That was the last conversation I had with my mother. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of family drama that I watched unfold from a safe distance. It started with desperate phone calls from various relatives, each one trying a different approach to manipulate me back into my old role as the family ATM. My cousin Rachel called first, trying the guilt approach. Wanda, I can't believe you're doing this to your own parents. They're going to lose their house. How can you sleep at night knowing you could help them? Rachel, I said calmly, were you at the anniversary dinner? Well, yes, but, did you see them call my children beggars and have security escort us out? There was a pause. That was unfortunate, but you're overreacting. Family forgives. Family also doesn't humiliate each other in public. Thanks for calling, Rachel, but my decision stands. Next came my Uncle Steve with the anger approach. Wanda, what you're doing is disgusting. Your parents are good people who made a mistake. You're destroying this family over your hurt feelings. Uncle Steve, let me ask you something. If your brother publicly called your children beggars and had you thrown out of a restaurant, would you continue paying his bills? That's different. How is it different? Because family sticks together. Exactly. And family doesn't treat each other the way my parents treated me and my children. The most manipulative call came from my grandmother on my mother's side, who was 89 and living in assisted living. Someone had clearly coached her on what to say. Wanda, darling, her frail voice trembled through the phone, I heard about the troubles with your parents. I'm so old, sweetheart, and I just want to see our family together before I pass on. Surely you can find it in your heart to forgive them? For me? This one almost got to me. Almost. But then I remembered Cora crying in the car, asking me why Grandma and Grandpa called us beggars. Grandma Rose, I love you very much, but what happened wasn't just a disagreement. They hurt my children badly. I can't expose Cora and Jake to that kind of treatment again. But Wanda, Grandma, did they tell you exactly what they said to my children? They said there was a misunderstanding about the dinner. I spent 10 minutes giving her the full, unvarnished truth about what happened. By the end, she was quiet for a long moment. Oh my, she finally said. They didn't tell me it was that bad. Those poor babies. Wanda, you do what you think is best for your children. That's what a good mother does. The flying monkey campaign intensified when my parents realized I wasn't budging. I started getting text messages from family members I hadn't heard from in years, all with variations of the same message: family is everything. Forgive and forget. Don't let money come between you and your parents. But the most telling incident happened about a month after the anniversary dinner. I was at Cora's soccer game when I spotted my mother in the parking lot, talking animatedly to some of the other parents. My stomach dropped as I realized what she was doing. After the game, one of the moms, Karen, approached me with a concerned expression. Wanda, I hope you don't mind me asking, but your mother was just telling us about some family troubles you're having. She seems really worried about you. What exactly did she say? Karen looked uncomfortable. She said you've been going through a difficult time since your divorce and that well, she's concerned about your mental health. She mentioned that you've cut off contact with your family and that she's worried about Cora and Jake's well-being. I felt my face flush with anger. My mother was trying to turn my children's friends' parents against me, painting me as an unstable mother who was keeping kids away from loving grandparents. Karen, I appreciate your concern, but I want you to know that Cora and Jake are doing very well. We're in family therapy to help them process some hurtful things that happened with their grandparents, but they're happy and healthy. Oh, okay. Your mother seems so upset. I'm sure she did. Karen, can I ask you something? If someone publicly humiliated you and your children, called you beggars, and had security escort you out of a restaurant, would you want your kids around those people? Karen's eyes widened. That actually happened? At my parents' anniversary dinner that I organized and paid for. In front of our entire family. Oh my God, Wanda. I had no idea. Your mother made it sound like you were just having some kind of breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm protecting my children from people who think it's acceptable to treat them that way, even if those people happen to be their grandparents. Karen nodded slowly. I completely understand. I'm so sorry that happened to you and the kids. Word spread quickly among the soccer parents, and by the next week, several of them had approached me to offer support. It turned out my mother's attempt at character assassination had backfired spectacularly. Meanwhile, the financial consequences for my family were mounting. I heard through Tyler that my parents had frantically tried to get loans to cover the mortgage, but their credit was shot from years of financial mismanagement. They had been relying on my payments to keep their credit score afloat, and without those payments, banks weren't interested in lending to them. Tammy's situation was even more precarious. Without her car, she couldn't get to her part-time job reliably, so she ended up quitting. The boyfriend she moved in with turned out to be less than stable, and within a month, she was couch surfing with various friends. But the most dramatic development came when I received a certified letter from a lawyer representing my parents about 2 months after the dinner. They were actually threatening to sue me for abandonment of family financial responsibilities. I called my own attorney, David Kim, who had handled my divorce. After I explained the situation and showed him the letter, he shook his head. Wanda, this is a frivolous legal threat. There's no such thing as abandonment of family financial responsibilities in family law, and they'd have to prove there was an actual written contract for ongoing support, which there clearly wasn't. So they can't force me to pay their bills? Absolutely not. Adults are responsible for their own financial obligations. The fact that you voluntarily helped them for years doesn't create any legal duty to continue helping them. This letter is just a desperate intimidation tactic. David sent a response letter that essentially told their lawyer to pound sand, but in much more professional language. We never heard from them again. The most heartbreaking part of this whole ordeal was watching how it affected Cora and Jake. Despite my best efforts to shield them, they picked up on the family tension. Cora started having nightmares about people calling her names, and Jake became clingy and anxious about going to public places. Our therapist, Dr. Cross, was incredible in helping us work through this trauma. She explained to the kids that sometimes adults make very bad choices and say hurtful things, but that doesn't mean the children did anything wrong. When someone calls you a mean name, Dr. Cross told them, that tells you about them, not about you. It tells you that they're not being kind, and it's okay to stay away from people who aren't kind to you. Jake, with his 6-year-old logic, asked, even if they're grandparents? Even if they're grandparents, Dr. Cross confirmed. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect, including you. It was during one of these therapy sessions that Cora said something that broke my heart and validated my decision at the same time. Mommy, I don't want to see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. They made me feel bad inside. About 2 months after the anniversary dinner, I got an unexpected call from Tammy. She was crying and sounded desperate. "Wanda, I need help. I don't have anywhere to live, and I don't have any money. Can I please stay with you for a few days until I figure things out?" I felt a familiar tug of sympathy, but then I remembered her words at the anniversary dinner: some family members just don't belong at classy events. "Tammy, I'm sorry you're struggling, but no. Please, Wanda. I'm your sister. I'll apologize for what happened at the dinner. I was wrong." "Are you apologizing because you genuinely realize what you did was hurtful, or because you need something from me?" There was a long pause. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters enormously. A real apology comes from understanding the harm you caused and feeling genuine remorse. What you're offering is a transaction, an apology in exchange for help." "Wanda, I'm desperate here. I'm sleeping on couches. I had to drop out of school. My whole life is falling apart. I'm sorry about that, but those are consequences of choices you made. You chose to humiliate me and my children. You chose to side with mom and dad when they called us beggars. Actions have consequences, Tammy. So you're just going to let me be homeless?" "You're not homeless. You have friends who are letting you stay with them. You're an adult who needs to figure out her own life, just like millions of other adults do every day." I can't believe how cold you've become. I've become protective of myself and my children. There's a difference. That call reinforced my decision. Even in desperation, Tammy couldn't acknowledge the real harm she had caused. She was sorry about the consequences to herself, but not about the pain she had inflicted on Cora and Jake. Over the next few months, I heard through the family grapevine that my parents ended up selling their house and moving into a small apartment. Tammy dropped out of graduate school and moved in with a boyfriend. Dad recovered from his dental work fully, thankfully. Dr. Cross told them, "That tells you about them, not about you. It tells you that they're not being kind, and it's okay to stay away from people who aren't kind to you." Jake, with his 6-year-old logic, asked, "Even if they're grandparents?" "Even if they're grandparents," Dr. Cross confirmed. "Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect, including you." It was during one of these therapy sessions that Cora said something that broke my heart and validated my decision at the same time. "Mommy, I don't want to see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. They made me feel bad inside." About 6 weeks after the anniversary dinner, I got an unexpected call from Tammy. She was crying and sounded desperate. "Wanda, I need help. I don't have anywhere to live, and I don't have any money. Can I please stay with you for a few days until I figure things out?" I felt a familiar tug of sympathy, but then I remembered her words at the anniversary dinner: some family members just don't belong at classy events. "Tammy, I'm sorry you're struggling, but no. Please, Wanda. I'm your sister. I'll apologize for what happened at the dinner. I was wrong." "Are you apologizing because you genuinely realize what you did was hurtful, or because you need something from me?" There was a long pause. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters enormously. A real apology comes from understanding the harm you caused and feeling genuine remorse. What you're offering is a transaction, an apology in exchange for help." "Wanda, I'm desperate here. I'm sleeping on couches. I had to drop out of school. My whole life is falling apart. I'm sorry about that, but those are consequences of choices you made. You chose to humiliate me and my children. You chose to side with mom and dad when they called us beggars. Actions have consequences, Tammy. So you're just going to let me be homeless?" "You're not homeless. You have friends who are letting you stay with them. You're an adult who needs to figure out her own life, just like millions of other adults do every day. I can't believe how cold you've become. I've become protective of myself and my children. There's a difference." That call reinforced my decision. Even in desperation, Tammy couldn't acknowledge the real harm she had caused. She was sorry about the consequences to herself, but not about the pain she had inflicted on Cora and Jake. Over the next month, I heard through the family grapevine that my parents ended up selling their house and moving into a small apartment. Tammy dropped out of graduate school and moved in with a boyfriend. Dad recovered from his surgery fully, thankfully. Several family members reached out to me during this time, some to criticize my actions and others to quietly express support. What surprised me most was learning that my parents had been telling people I was mentally unstable and having a breakdown to explain my behavior. But the most revealing conversation came from my 16-year-old cousin Tyler, Tammy's son from a previous relationship who had been raised mostly by my parents. He called me one evening, sounding upset. "Aunt Wanda," he said, "I wanted to apologize for what happened at the dinner. I was there, and it was really messed up." "Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot. I also wanted you to know that Grandma and Grandpa have been saying really mean things about you to everyone. They're telling people you're greedy and selfish and that you abandoned them over nothing. How do you feel about that?" I think it's bullshit, he said bluntly. Sorry for the language, but it is. You've been paying for everything for as long as I can remember. You paid for my school clothes last year when Mom couldn't. You've never asked for anything back, and you've never made anyone feel bad about needing help. Your mom and grandparents see things differently. My mom is jealous of you, Tyler said matter-of-factly. She always has been. And Grandma and Grandpa got used to having someone else solve all their problems. They're mad that you're not doing it anymore, but they can't admit they were wrong, so they're making you the bad guy. This kid was 13 and had more insight than the rest of my family combined. Tyler, I want you to know that none of this affects how I feel about you. You're always welcome in my home. Thanks, Aunt Wanda. I really appreciate that. And I want you to know that what they did to Cora and Jake was really horrible. Those kids didn't deserve that. After I hung up with Tyler, I realized something important. I wasn't losing my family. I was discovering who my real family was. Today, 6 months after the anniversary dinner, my life has settled into a new normal. My children and I have started going to therapy to process what happened, and it's been incredibly helpful. Cora and Jake still ask about their grandparents sometimes, but they're doing well and seem happier overall. My business has continued to thrive, and without the constant drain of family financial emergencies, I've been able to focus on growing it even more. I've also been able to put more money aside for Cora and Jake's college funds and our own future. I've maintained relationships with the family members who supported me or at least remained neutral. Aunt Patricia and I have gotten much closer, and Tyler comes to visit regularly. My ex-husband Michael has been surprisingly supportive throughout this whole ordeal, and we've actually improved our co-parenting relationship. As for my parents and Tammy, I haven't spoken to any of them since the phone call about Dad's surgery. I heard they spent Christmas at Tammy's boyfriend's family's house, which is fine by me. Cora, Jake, and I had a wonderful Christmas morning together, followed by dinner at Aunt Patricia's house with Tyler and several cousins who chose to include us in their celebration. I still get the occasional guilt trip message from flying monkeys in the family, usually around holidays or when my parents face some new financial crisis. I've learned to ignore them or respond with a simple, "I'm sorry they're struggling, but that's not my responsibility anymore." The hardest part of this whole experience has been accepting that the family I thought I had was largely an illusion. I had confused being an ATM with being loved. I had mistaken financial dependence for family bonds. I had enabled toxic behavior by cushioning all the consequences. But I've also learned that real family doesn't humiliate you in public, doesn't call your children names, and doesn't treat you like an ATM. Real family shows up with love and respect, not just when they need money. Some people have asked me if I regret cutting off financial support so abruptly. My answer is no. I gave my family 5 years and nearly $400,000 worth of chances to show me love and respect. Instead, they showed me that they saw me as a resource, not a person. The anniversary dinner was just the final confirmation of what the relationship really was. Would I reconcile with them if they apologized and acknowledged what they did wrong? Honestly, I don't know. The damage to my children was so severe and unnecessary that it would take a lot more than an apology to rebuild trust. But they haven't apologized anyway, so it's a moot point. What I do know is that I'm happier now. I'm less stressed, more focused on my actual family, my children, and I've learned to invest my time and money in relationships that are reciprocal and healthy. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Family is supposed to be a source of love and support, not a financial drain that comes with emotional abuse. And if people only value you for what you can give them financially, they don't really value you at all. Oh, and one final update: I heard through Tyler that my parents are planning a family reconciliation dinner for Dad's upcoming 60th birthday. Apparently, they're expecting me to plan and pay for it, just like old times. I won't be attending. But I hear the local Applebee's has reasonable prices for people on a budget.